Blood roses, a Valentine's nightmare. Valentine's Day was supposed to be perfect. I had it all planned. Dinner at her favorite restaurant, a bouquet of deep red roses, and the ring that would change our lives forever. Emily had been my world for 3 years, and I was finally ready to take the next step. But something went wrong. Horribly, horribly wrong. It started with a text message. Meet me at Holloway Manor at 8 p.m. I have a surprise for you. Love, M. That didn't make sense. We had dinner reservations at Le Petit Rouge, not Holloway Manor, the abandoned estate on the outskirts of town. It had been empty for decades, a place of ghost stories and whispered warnings. I called her. No answer. I texted back. No reply. A cold unease crept into my stomach. But love does strange things to people. Maybe she had planned something special, something different. So, like a fool, I grabbed my coat, took the ring, and drove into the darkness. The manor. The gates groaned as I pushed them open. The wind howled through the dead trees, rattling the branches like skeletal fingers. The manor loomed ahead, massive, decayed, and lifeless. The front door stood ajar, beckoning. Emily? My voice felt small in the emptiness. Silence. Then a faint giggle. It was coming from upstairs. I stepped inside, my shoes crunching on broken glass and debris. The air smelled of rot and something metallic. Something wrong. The giggle echoed again, but this time it was distorted, warped, almost childlike. A chill crawled down my spine. I hesitated at the foot of the grand staircase. Shadows danced along the walls, flickering in the candlelight of an unseen source. Then I saw it. A single red rose lay on the bottom step, fresh and vibrant against the dust and decay. I picked it up. Another giggle. Closer. I climbed the stairs, my heart hammering. More roses lined the way, leading me down the hall to a door at the end. It was slightly open, a dim light spilling out. Emily? I pushed the door wider. The room was a vision of crimson. Candles flickered along the walls, their wax dripping like blood. Rose petals covered the floor, leading to a table in the center, set for two. A bottle of wine, 2 glasses, a heart-shaped box of chocolates. And Emily, she sat across from an empty chair, her back to me. Her long black hair cascaded over her shoulders, her red dress hugging her frame. Relief flooded me. What the hell? I was worried. She turned, and I froze. Her face was pale, too pale like wax. Her lips, usually soft and pink, were a deep, bruised purple. And her eyes were all wrong. Gone was the warmth, the sparkle. Instead, they were hollow, black pits that seemed to swallow the dim candlelight. And she was smiling. "Happy Valentine's Day," she whispered. "The game." I took a step back. My breath came in ragged gasps. "Emily, what's going on?" She tilted her head, as if confused by my question. Then, with slow, deliberate movements, she lifted her arm. Something dripped from her fingers. Blood. A deep, wet pool of it spread beneath her chair, soaking into the petals. The air turned suffocating, thick with the scent of iron. "I planned something special," she said, her voice lilting, sing-song. "A game." The door behind me slammed shut. I spun around, my pulse hammering. My fingers clawed at the handle, but it wouldn't budge. "Let's play," Emily whispered. When I turned back, she was standing. But it wasn't just her. Shadows twisted along the walls, elongating into forms. Figures with empty eyes and stretched grins. They crawled from the darkness, limbs too long, movements jagged. And they were all holding roses. Black roses. I backed away. "This isn't real. This isn't real." Emily took a step closer. The candlelight flickered over her skin, revealing something grotesque. Her flesh wasn't smooth anymore. It rippled, split, like something was moving beneath. Her smile widened, cracking her cheeks. Blood trickled from the corners of her mouth. "I love you," she murmured. "Do you love me?" Her voice came from everywhere and nowhere, layered with others. Whispers, wails, laughter. I stumbled against the table. The wine glass tipped over, spilling deep red liquid across the surface. I reached into my pocket, fingers closing around the small velvet box. My mind was screaming at me to run, to wake up, to do anything but stand there. Instead, I did something insane. I opened the box. Inside, the engagement ring gleamed under the candlelight, untouched by the madness around me. Emily's eyes flicked down to it. For a moment, the shadows froze. A shuddering breath escaped her lips. Her face twisted, as if in pain. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. The figures behind her recoiled, their grins faltering. I didn't understand, but I knew I had seconds. "Emily," I said, my voice trembling. "I love you. Come back." She clutched her head, her body convulsing. The shadows screamed, the walls shuddering with the force of their wails. And then, darkness, the aftermath. I woke up outside the manor, sprawled on the frozen ground. My car was still parked nearby, headlights cutting through the night. My hands were empty. The ring was gone. So was Emily. The manor was silent, the door now firmly shut. The roses that had lined the path were gone, as if they had never existed. For a long time, I sat there, gasping, shaking. Then my phone buzzed. With shaking fingers, I pulled it from my pocket. One new message. "Thank you for playing. I'll always love you." I stared at the screen, my blood turning to ice. And then, as the wind whispered through the trees, I heard it. A giggle, right behind me. Deadly Valentine. I never believed in grand Valentine's Day gestures. Chocolate hearts, overpriced roses, and candlelit dinners felt more like forced traditions than real romance. But for Melissa, it mattered. She adored the holiday, the sentiment, the idea of love wrapped up in a single night. So when she surprised me with an invitation to a secluded Valentine's Day retreat, I didn't have the heart to say no. We drove for hours, deep into the countryside, where the trees grew taller and the roads became nothing but winding dirt paths. The retreat was a cozy, rustic inn, tucked away from civilization, promising an unforgettable Valentine's Day experience. I should have known that wasn't necessarily a good thing. The moment we arrived, something felt off. The innkeeper, a thin woman with hollow cheeks and eyes too wide for her face, greeted us with an unsettling smile. "You're just in time," she said, handing us an old-fashioned room key. "Dinner is at 7. Be sure not to be late." Her words lingered as we walked up the creaky wooden staircase to our room. It was charming in a haunted sort of way, heavy drapes, antique furniture, a 4-poster bed. Yet, an odd scent hung in the air. Not quite musty, but metallic. Melissa, as always, was enchanted. "Isn't this romantic?" she breathed, spinning in place. "It's like something out of an old novel." I forced a smile, unwilling to ruin her excitement with my unease. At dinner, the dining hall was dimly lit with flickering candles. Couples filled the tables, all dressed elegantly, as if this were some exclusive event. Yet something about them felt staged, like actors playing their parts. They ate in perfect synchrony, smiles too stiff, laughter too measured. And the food tasted strange. "Try the wine," Melissa said, already sipping hers. I hesitated. The liquid was a deep, rich red, almost too thick. When I finally took a sip, the taste was sharp, iron-like. I set my glass down. "I think I'll stick to water," Melissa laughed. "You're always so paranoid." The conversations around us were eerily uniform, murmured words that blended together like a script being read aloud. A cold shiver ran down my spine. That's when I saw him. A man at the far end of the room, dressed in a dark suit. He wasn't eating. He wasn't drinking. He was watching me. His face was expressionless, eyes locked onto mine. I nudged Melissa. "Do you see that guy over there?" She glanced over, then frowned. "What guy?" I turned back, but the man was gone. I swallowed hard, pushing my plate away. "I think I just need some fresh air." Melissa sighed but didn't argue. "I'll meet you in the room?" I nodded and left the dining hall, my heartbeat drumming in my ears. The hallways were eerily quiet, the walls lined with old portraits of couples. Their painted eyes seemed to follow me as I walked, their expressions frozen in something that resembled agony rather than love. Then I heard it, a soft, rhythmic sound. Drip, drip, drip. I followed the noise down the hall, stopping in front of a door slightly ajar. Against every rational thought, I pushed it open. The bathroom lights flickered. The bathtub was full, but the water wasn't clear. It was deep red, thick, blood, and floating in it, I staggered back. A heart, a real human heart, bobbing on the surface. A sharp breath behind me made my blood run cold. I spun around, expecting the strange man from the dining hall. But it was Melissa. She was staring at the tub, her face pale. "Oh God, we need to get out of here," I whispered, grabbing her hand. But before we could move, a shadow blocked the doorway. The innkeeper. "You're not supposed to see this," she said calmly, stepping inside. I moved in front of Melissa. "What the hell is going on?" The innkeeper's eerie smile never wavered. "Tonight is a special night," she said, her voice unnervingly soothing. "Every couple must prove their love." A terrible realization washed over me. The laughter at dinner, the synchronized conversations, the missing man. I took a step back, shielding Melissa. "We're leaving. Now." The innkeeper tilted her head. "Leaving isn't an option." Then the lights went out. Melissa's scream cut through the darkness. I reached for her, but something yanked her away. My hands grasped at empty air. "Melissa!" A hand clamped over my mouth. Hot breath against my ear. "Run," a voice whispered. I didn't need to be told twice. I tore myself free and sprinted down the hallway, the walls seeming to close in around me. I reached the staircase, heart hammering. And then I saw her. Melissa was standing at the bottom of the stairs, staring up at me. Her dress was soaked in red, her hands dripping with it. "Melissa!" My voice broke. She smiled, but it wasn't her smile. It was wrong. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Behind her, the other guests emerged from the shadows, watching, waiting. Their mouths stretched into grotesque grins, eyes glinting in the candlelight. The last thing I saw before I turned and ran into the night was the dark-suited man standing among them, his hollow eyes burning into mine. And then the chanting began. Blood roses. I always hated Valentine's Day. The forced romance, the overpriced flowers, the suffocating expectations. It all felt fake. But this year I had no choice but to participate. My girlfriend, Emily, had been dropping hints for weeks about a special surprise she had planned for us. I didn't have the heart to tell her that I wasn't really in the mood for grand gestures. So when she invited me to her parents' remote cabin for a weekend getaway, I agreed. It was supposed to be romantic, just the two of us, away from the city. She had everything planned: candles, wine, chocolates. She even packed a red dress she said she bought just for me. The cabin sat deep in the woods, far from civilization. The drive there took almost 3 hours, and as we approached, the air grew unnaturally still. The road was lined with naked trees, their skeletal branches clawing at the sky. Fog curled around the trunks, thick and eerie. By the time we reached the clearing where the cabin stood, the sun had almost disappeared behind the horizon, casting everything in a dying orange glow. Something about the place unsettled me. Maybe it was the isolation, or maybe it was the way the cabin looked like it hadn't been used in years. The wooden panels were weathered, the porch creaked under our weight, and the windows were dark, like empty eye sockets staring at us. "Isn't it perfect?" Emily beamed, squeezing my hand. I forced a smile. "Yeah, it's definitely something." Inside, the cabin was colder than I expected. The fireplace was unlit, and the air smelled faintly of damp wood and something else I couldn't place. I helped Emily unload our bags while she set the mood: dim lights, soft music, and a bottle of wine she had been saving. As the night went on, I started to relax. Maybe I had been overthinking things. We laughed, drank, and reminisced about our relationship. Emily looked beautiful in the candlelight, her brown eyes glistening with excitement. Then she handed me a small, wrapped box. "Happy Valentine's Day," she said, practically bouncing in her seat. I hesitated before unwrapping it. Inside was a single red rose, its petals soft and velvety. But as I looked closer, I realized something was off. The stem wasn't green, it was dark, almost black. When I touched it, my fingers came away with a sticky red substance. "Is this blood?" I asked, recoiling. Emily giggled. "Don't be silly." She plucked the rose from my hand and twirled it between her fingers. The petals darkened, turning a deep crimson, and the scent of iron filled my nostrils. "What the hell is this?" My voice came out sharper than I intended. Emily pouted. "It's a special rose. I found it here, growing near the cabin." I didn't know what to say. The air felt heavier now, pressing against my chest. A sudden gust of wind rattled the windows, and the flames in the candles flickered violently. The shadows in the corners of the room seemed to stretch, growing taller. I tried to shake off the unease. "Maybe we should." A loud thump cut me off. Came from the bedroom. Emily's expression didn't change. She just stared at me, waiting. Another thump, this time closer. I stood up, my heart hammering. "Did you hear that?" Emily tilted her head. "Hear what?" A slow, dragging sound followed. Something heavy was moving inside the cabin. I grabbed Emily's arm. "We need to go. Now." She didn't resist, but there was no fear in her eyes. Just amusement. We moved toward the door, but before I could reach it, the lights flickered and died. The cabin was plunged into darkness. Then a whisper, low, faint, coming from the bedroom. My breath caught in my throat. Emily squeezed my hand. "He's here." I turned to her, my blood running cold. "Who?" Before she could answer, the bedroom door burst open. A figure stepped out. Tall. Wrong. Its body was wrapped in something that looked like rotting flowers. Roses, their petals stained black and red, pulsing as if alive. The face. Oh God, the face. It wasn't human. Its mouth stretched too wide, the skin around it torn and bleeding. Its eyes hollow, black pits, fixed on me. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The thing took a slow, shuddering step forward. The wooden floor groaned beneath its weight. Then, in a voice that was both Emily's and something else, it whispered, "You're the last one." Emily let go of my hand. I stumbled back. What is this?" She smiled, but it wasn't her smile anymore. "You didn't think you were my first, did you?" Her voice was too calm, too rehearsed. "Every Valentine's Day, I bring someone here." The thing took another step. I could hear its wet, labored breathing. Emily continued, "They always scream at first, but it only hurts for a little while." I turned and ran. I didn't care where I was going. I just needed to get out. My feet pounded against the wooden floor, the cabin stretching endlessly around me. The front door was gone, replaced by a wall of black roses. I felt something grab my shoulder. Cold, clammy, not human. I screamed, and then darkness. I woke up to the smell of roses. Not fresh ones, rotting ones. I was lying on the forest floor, my head pounding. My clothes were torn, my skin covered in scratches. The cabin was gone. Emily was gone. The only thing left was the blackened rose in my hand, its petals wet with something that looked like blood. I ran until I found the road, until I flagged down a passing car and begged them to take me as far away as possible. I never found Emily again. I never found the cabin. But every year, on Valentine's Day, I wake up to a single black rose on my pillow, and I know it's not over. Love me forever. I never believed in Valentine's Day. All the flowers, the chocolates, the grand gestures, it all felt like an over-commercialized excuse to drain people's wallets. But then came Emily. She had a way of making even the most cynical person, me, believe in love again. Her laugh, the way she wrinkled her nose when she smiled, the warmth of her touch. It had been a year since we got together, and against all odds, I found myself actually looking forward to Valentine's Day. I wanted everything to be perfect. Emily had always loved old, abandoned places. Something about the way history lingered in them fascinated her. So when I found out about an old, supposedly haunted restaurant just outside the city, I thought it would be the perfect place for a Valentine's dinner. I booked a private tour, pulled a few strings, and even arranged a candlelit dinner inside the derelict building. She was going to love it. The place had been closed for decades, but it was still standing, frozen in time. The nameplate above the entrance read La Belle Amour, its once golden lettering now rusted and faded. The story behind it was tragic. Decades ago, a couple had gone there for a Valentine's dinner, but the man had poisoned his lover and then taken his own life. Since then, people claim to hear whispers, see figures moving in the windows, and feel an overwhelming sense of sorrow when stepping inside. I didn't believe in ghosts. I thought it was the perfect mix of creepy and romantic. Emily was ecstatic when I told her. She loved the idea of a haunted Valentine's date. That night, she wore a red dress, a deep shade like fresh blood. Her eyes sparkled as we approached the entrance, my hand wrapped tightly around hers. "Are you scared?" I teased. "Not at all," she whispered, smiling. I pushed open the creaky wooden door, and the scent of dust and decay filled my nose. The restaurant was still furnished, old tables with white, moth-eaten tablecloths, chairs covered in cobwebs, and a grand chandelier hanging above, its crystals coated in grime. A single table in the center had been cleaned and set for us. Candles flickered, casting long shadows along the peeling wallpaper. The atmosphere was eerie, but oddly beautiful. I pulled out her chair, and she sat down with a grin. "This is amazing," she said, running her fingers along the silverware. As I poured the wine, I swore I heard something, a soft whisper. I froze, looking toward the dark corners of the room. "Did you hear that?" I asked. Emily shook her head. "Probably just the wind." I tried to shake off the unease and lifted my glass. To us, we clinked glasses and the night carried on. We laughed, talked about our future, and for a while, everything was perfect. Until I heard it again. A whisper, louder this time. I turned my head sharply toward the source, but there was nothing. Just empty darkness beyond the candlelight. Emily noticed my unease. "What's wrong?" "I don't know," I admitted. "I keep hearing something." She frowned and tilted her head. "Like what?" I opened my mouth to answer, but then the whisper returned. This time we both heard it. "Get out." The blood drained from my face. Emily's grip on my hand tightened. I turned toward the voice, expecting to see someone standing there, but there was nothing. I forced a chuckle. "Probably just an old building settling." Emily nodded, but she didn't look convinced. Still, we tried to continue our meal. The tension in the air was thick now, like something unseen was watching us. The candles flickered violently, and the air grew colder. Then I saw it, a figure. In the reflection of the grand chandelier above, I caught a glimpse of someone standing behind Emily. A man. His face was hollow, sunken eyes locked onto her. I gasped, nearly knocking over my wine glass. "Emily, don't move." Her eyes widened. "What? Why?" I swallowed hard. "There's someone behind you." Her face went pale, but she didn't turn. "You're joking, right?" I shook my head. Slowly, I reached for my phone to shine the flashlight. But the moment the light hit the spot where the figure had been, he was gone. Emily spun around, her breath shaky. "There's nothing there," but I knew what I saw. A heavy silence filled the room. Then the whispers started again. "She looks just like her." The voice was raspy, filled with longing. Emily clutched my hand. "Let's get out of here." I nodded, grabbing our things in a rush. But as we stood, the door slammed shut with a deafening bang. The candles blew out all at once. Darkness swallowed us whole. Emily screamed. I fumbled for my phone, my shaking hands barely able to turn on the flashlight. When I did, the beam landed on the far side of the room, where the figure now stood. He was closer now, dressed in an old-fashioned suit. His sunken eyes locked onto Emily with an unnatural hunger. "She belongs to me," he whispered. Emily's grip on my arm was so tight I could feel her nails digging into my skin. I grabbed her hand. Run! We sprinted toward the door, my heart pounding. I yanked at the handle, but it wouldn't budge. Behind us, the whispers turned into a guttural wail. Emily sobbed, pounding at the door. Please! The air grew thick, suffocating. I turned back just in time to see the figure reaching for Emily, his skeletal fingers brushing against her hair. No! I roared, lunging at him. My hands passed through nothing but ice-cold air. Emily shrieked as something unseen yanked her backward. I grabbed her wrist, pulling with all my strength. Let her go! The room spun, the walls warped, and then, just like that, the door flew open. We tumbled out onto the ground outside, gasping for breath. The air was warm again. The whispers were gone. I turned to Emily. Her dress was torn, her skin ice-cold, but she was alive. We never spoke about what happened that night. We never told anyone. But sometimes, in the dead of night, I hear it again. A whisper in the dark. She belongs to me.